Hey folks, MasakoX here. A lot of these tales come about because of a basic premise. Something so small or easy to understand that it's quite hard to imagine what could possibly change. Thanks to a space pod's course being slightly adjusted, the baby Kakarot was subsequently sent to a different corner of Earth. Instead of landing in the hills of Mount Paozu, this version of Goku landed in West City, on the property of Capsule Corp. He became a member of Dr. Briefs' family, and grew up to be not just a pretty good fighter, but also a pretty good mechanic, which came in very handy in his quest to save his home from the wrath of the Saiyans and, Vegeta and Nappa and all that. This version of Kakarot is a much more well-rounded individual, with better social skills, a greater capacity for lateral thinking that even impresses the prince, and that just makes things so much easier for everyone in the long run. But can this act of nurture win out? Especially when you got someone of a more ethereal and temporal nature after you. In the last part, Boxer had been missing for quite some time. Ultimately, it had become clear that Boxer had been hiding with Zarbon and Dodoria for a while, whom had helped him get one over Frieza beforehand, deeming the Saiyan as the more sensible choice to back going forward instead of the Emperor. They wound up on the Yardrat, and Boxer managed to conduct his training with Pibara, as in the original, but his two new allies were not so adept in acclimating to this new training regimen, with Dodoria especially flunking out, Zarbon taking great mirth about that. But they were too late to do that though, as Cold and Mecha Frieza was still heading for Earth anyway, whilst also dealing with Vegeta, who had been busy tearing up their organisation out in deep space in the meantime. On top of that, Cooler was there too! They were really pulling out the stops in this one. But when they got there, they were greeted by the arrival of Trunks. With him and then Boxer, they were able to take down the Monarch and his son, because Kakarot here, he used instant transmission instead of just using a ruddy pod! But then Cooler was dispatched by another mysterious entity. Turns out that this guy, who we called Nomad, was the one that had killed Boxer a couple of years back, around about part 11. In the end, the entire Dragon team were left with more questions than they had before everyone had just descended upon the planet, which is where we resume. It had to be recognised that, indeed, Cold and Frieza had been defeated. A very major threat to them and the galaxy had been quickly curtailed, but right now, that was small fry in comparison to what they also had to get their heads around. For you see, everyone's focus was on the showdown between Boxer, the mysterious future boy, and that other mysterious future man who called himself Nomad for some reason. All of this meant that Trunks' position within the team was a lot more unstable than it had been in the original story. They didn't really trust him as much. Instead of looking at him with relief or curiosity, the team gazed at future Trunks with concern, distrust, confusion, doubt. And yeah, Trunks could sense this. He was completely in the dark about that other guy. Instead of talking to Boxer alone, he told of his warning to those present. Boxer, Zarbon, Dodoria, and Nomad. Look, I came here to warn Boxer about the android threat. Boxer looked at Trunks with skepticism. The android threat? The Saiyan tilted his head slightly. 3 years from now, the Red Ribbon Army will send 2 androids. Trunks exhaled slowly for the next bit, looking at Boxer, and he in turn looking like he wasn't really buying any of this. He had to be a little more transparent to get his point across, and to keep Boxer listening. My name is Trunks, and I come from the future. You will succumb to a heart virus, and everyone except for Longjun and myself will perish. Boxer was still doubting this. That sounds pretty ominous. How can we be sure what you say is true? Who are you to us? Trunks then lowered his voice. I am your nephew, Bulma's son. Boxer's eyes widened. So your father would be... Oh my. Nomad crossed his arms. If you want to prepare yourself properly, I suggest taking your friends to planet Yardrat to do some training. You know for yourself how effective Pibara is at extracting the potential out of trainees. Boxer blinked twice. How do you... I know a lot of things, including what he just said. Let's just say, my feeling of deja vu
isn't like anyone else's.
Trunks had a sudden thought.
If you defeated me with such ease, couldn't you just destroy the Red Ribbon Army right now? Before it happens? You could just end all of this before it even reared its ugly head. A naive simplification, boy. It's not as easy as that. It never is.
His eyes pierced Trunks's with a combination of seriousness and sadness. It was as if he had yearned for it to be that easy, but fate and the timelines would just simply not allow it.
For once, Boxer and his crew need this experience to play out as intended, as in the future, there are even worse things waiting for them. You don't want to meddle too much with timelines. If I took care of your problems for you, this would lead to dire consequences later.
Timelines? By that you imply...
This ain't my first rodeo, kid. We're trying to optimize said lines as much as we can. I won't bore you with the details just yet. Also, those new space underlings of yours, tell them to take care of Frieza's army. They might come in handy someday.
Zarbon and Dodoria were stunned. Them? Take control of the Frieza Force? Can we trust them? Boxer eyed Nomad rather coldly.
No, but you might have no other choice.
Oh, I resent that, moaned Zarbon whilst Dodoria clucked like an irate chicken. Nomad started to turn around to take his leave, but Trunks tried to stop him.
Wait, I need to know. Do I succeed? Is what I'm doing right? Will me fighting for the future turn out okay?
The old man didn't even look at him. Maybe it was for the best, actually, that he didn't know. After all, future Bulma had warned him a lot about paradoxes.
Train yourself to be the best. Don't count on anyone else but yourself, if you want to even think about surviving. Besides, I've already done you a favor by breaking that ridiculous thing. He motioned to the remains of Cooler. Try not to be as big of a failure than you were in my timeline.
Trunks looked stunned at what Nomad just said, and so did Boxer. But before they could confront him anymore, he simply vanished. No time machine, nothing, just gone. Now, Boxer had to explain everything to the rest of the team. Though Trunks asked him to obscure his familial lineage from his mother, due to the delicate nature of time and their lack of understanding of it, his uncle was happy though to oblige. Piccolo was the other one to hear everything, and he decided to keep it to himself for the sake of simplicity. He didn't really want to get involved in anything sticky. As Boxer was busy explaining everything, he also reminded Zarbon and Dodoria that the best way to help out, now that they knew their effective orders, was to gather the remains of Cold's army and try and make peace with the Galactic Patrol. Neither they or Vegeta were really happy about this arrangement, but Boxer convinced them that currently this was the best and only course of action. Zarbon lamented being told what to do by what was effectively a ghost.
Is this what must become of us? Slaves to time? Well, think about it, Zarbon. Time has thrown us a bone. We get to be leaders. All thanks to attrition.
Attrition? What does that even mean?
There's a lot of things you don't know, my friend. Let's work on that together, as we tell those punks what to do.
Indeed, it's fair to assume that Frieza's former right and left-hand people were happy by the prospect of having underlings and taking over the Force. But making peace with the Patrol? Ooh, that was quite a bitter pill to swallow, but time had dictated that that was the case, and the cosmos was known also for being a rather strange bedfellow. If it made things easier in the long run, then alright. Needless to say, this idea sounded much better to Jaco and Mark, who knew that they would be delivering a very interesting report to the higher-ups when they got back. As for the remaining members of the Frieza Force that had left Earth, Zarbon promised that they would keep in touch with Boxer as things progressed. As said ship left Earth's atmosphere, Vegeta gazed up with considerable disdain.
They will betray us. You know that.
Boxer turned to him. Think about it, Vegeta. What good would they be if we just had them stay here and train? I saw for myself that they aren't the training types. They're no good in that manner. Otherwise, they'd be just standing there doing nothing. No, they're far more useful out there, making sure that Frieza's men don't cause any trouble. Besides, I'm pretty sure either me or you could take them both down if we had to. With their plans in motion, Boxer decided to recruit all the Dragon team and train them on Yardrat. He reached out to Yamcha, Tenshinhan, Chaozu, Krillin, Piccolo, Mark, Jaco, Roshi, and Launch. Yes, Launch is back, folks. I know you've been asking about her. He also convinced Chi-Chi that he could train Lon Jon safely there and bring him back with instant transmission for tea. And, of course, homework. So he wouldn't have to have his education being disrupted. That was enough for Chi-Chi. She was in fact impressed with instant transmission. Think of the savings in transportation costs. I never have to buy gas again! Vegeta was the only one, though, who had said no, and decided to find his own path into getting stronger. And so, for the next 3 years, everyone trained on Yardrat. For Launch, this was an interesting experience. She had been very busy as of late with her bodyguard agency. It was very successful. Meaning, though, her training had been pushed to the wayside because of it. The company grew and, something had to give. She had yearned, though, to get back into training, but money was just quite the tempting siren. Also, she was struggling with this particular kind of training. She found it to be more meditative than she was used to, as she had slacked off from the more disciplined side of martial arts. That didn't mean that her overall performance was bad, though. Quite the opposite. Thanks to Bibara's help, she was able to find a new balance between her two personas, and remind herself of both of their individual strengths. Launch wasn't the only one to flourish in this world either. All the other humans were able to develop in different aspects when it came to Yardratian training, with Chaozu really enjoying the whole gigantification shtick. Of course, they found time to return to Earth because, instant transmission being the cornerstone of Yardratian training, and Bulma and Tights were monitoring any supposed Red Ribbon activity in the meantime. But apparently, they had hidden themselves really well this time. There was no record of their movements at all. As far as they were concerned, the Red Ribbon Army were no longer in existence. For a moment, Boxer and Bulma were questioning whether the threat that they had been told about was actually true. After all, the likes of Commander Red and Dr. Gero were gone. Who would have been left to lead the group? Their only lead was a splintering from the original army. They called themselves Red Pharmaceuticals. That was all that was left. That was the branch of the Red Ribbon Army that produced medicines and was the other cash cow for the army. It generated their reserves, but it seemed that after the downfall of said army, it was working on its own. And without any outright proof, the Dragon Team could have been seen themselves as the bad guys, attacking an innocent company for no reason. But they had noticed something, that recently the company had gone eerily quiet. Maybe that was the best sign that they had going, that something was up? Meanwhile, Vegeta was training in the gravity chamber, and as in the original, kinda got close to Bulma. Which wasn't that weird considering that Yamcha was busy training on Yardrat, so, while the cat that loves food's away... Boxer didn't tell anyone that he knew about Trunks' relationship to them, though, and the only person that confronted him about it was Piccolo.
You think we could trust either of them?
The Saiyan shook his head.
Hard to say, but both of them seem desperate to impart their information to us in different ways.
Piccolo then raised his brow.
Well, I'd like to remind you that one of them did kill you.
That's right, but it was for the right reasons ultimately.
Piccolo looked surprised.
You're okay with that?
Without my training with King Kai, I'd be way behind with my training. Also, without his idea to take you all to Yardrat, I wouldn't have come up with that on my own. It hadn't occurred to me, actually.
The Namekian sighed loudly.
Well, at least you're being honest with me.
When the 3 years had come to a close, Bulma had come up with some interesting information. She had found some interesting intel concerning the Red Ribbon lot. Apparently, some time ago, a mysterious spacecraft had been launched from a place previously believed to be a now-defunct Red Ribbon Army base. She called Boxer about it, who decided to investigate it together with Launch and the 2 patrollers, Jaco and Mark, but when they got there was nothing left. It had been cleared out. Very well. No trace that the Red Ribbon Army really worked here to some capacity. It seemed that something took place here, but they couldn't make heads or tails as to what had taken place there. Computers, filing cabinets, vehicles, everything had been removed or destroyed. It didn't look like a ruin either, it was just deserted.
Seems like someone had been using this location until recently, but the fact that they left no real trace of anything? Worrying.
Why would those Red Ribbon twubs even go to space?
Launch was looking around.
Maybe to build a base on the moon.
Well, that would at least give Monster Carrot some neighbors. Well, we haven't tracked anything leaving Earth lately, but we have been preoccupied a lot with the whole Frieza farce. We should be on guard nonetheless. If those goons are indeed planning to expand into space, They may be dangerous for the overall galactic safety.
But time continued to pass, and they sadly found no further signs of any suspicious activity. Whatever happened, that was it. Until one sunny day though, on one of the islands 9 miles from South City, 2 men who hadn't been seen in a long time appeared. One of them was General Blue, the other Mercenary Tao. But there was something vastly different about the two, and soon enough, Boxer and his friends were about to find out exactly what made them so different. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. If you like the story where things weren't too hot for Trunks, check out this story here where he found a younger Bulma and, well, complicated things. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!